Hey, what's up? What's going on? Welcome to English with Dane, a podcast designed to improve your English. As always, I'm your host, Dane, and you can find me on Instagram at English with Dane. If you'd like a full transcript of this and every future episode, let me know. If you don't use Instagram, send me an email at englishwithdane@gmail.com. For today's episode, we'll be going back in time to revisit an extremely important moment in history and learn a bunch of new practical vocabulary and expressions along the way. So let's get to it. You are listening to the 27th episode of Season 2 of English with Dane. Hit it. Okay, we have officially started the show, so let's get into our Today in History segment. The headline reads, VE Day is celebrated in America and Britain. On May 8th, 1945, both Great Britain and the United States celebrate Victory in Europe Day. Cities in both nations, as well as formerly occupied cities in Western Europe, put out flags and banners, banderas y pancartas, rejoicing in the defeat of the Nazi war machine during World War II. The 8th of May was the day when German troops throughout Europe finally surrendered. The main concern or worry of many German soldiers at this point was not to get captured by Soviet forces, to keep from being taken prisoner, right? About 1 million Germans attempted a mass exodus to the west when the fighting in Czechoslovakia ended, but were stopped by the Russians and taken captive. The Russians took approximately 2 million prisoners in the period just before and after the German surrender. Meanwhile, more than 13,000 British prisoners of war were released and sent back to Great Britain. There were still confrontations between German and Soviet forces the next day. On May 9th, the Soviets would lose, perderían, 600 more soldiers in Silesia before the Germans finally surrendered. Consequently, VE Day, or Victory in Europe Day, was not celebrated until the 9th in Moscow, with a radio broadcast salute from Stalin himself. He said, "The age-long struggle of the Slav nations has ended in victory. Your courage has defeated the Nazis. The war is over." Upon the defeat of Germany, celebrations erupted throughout the Western world, especially in the UK and North America. More than 1 million people celebrated in the streets throughout the UK to mark the end of the European part of the war. In London, crowds massed in Trafalgar Square and up the Mall to Buckingham Palace, where King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, accompanied by Prime Minister Winston Churchill, appeared on the balcony of the palace before the cheering crowds. Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth II, and her sister Princess Margaret were allowed to wander incognito among the crowds and take part in the celebrations. In the United States, great celebrations took place in many American cities, especially in New York's Times Square. Victory in Europe Day coincided with President Harry Truman's 61st birthday. He dedicated the victory to the memory of his predecessor, Franklin D. Roosevelt, who had died of a cerebral hemorrhage less than a month earlier. I can't imagine what that must have felt like, knowing that the war was finally over after years of living in fear, being bombed, reading about it on the news every day, relatives going off to fight, etc. It's crazy. Anyway, it's time for a vocabulary check. The first one is the verb to rejoice, spelled R-E-J-O-I-C-E. To rejoice means to feel and show joy or happiness, right? Mostrar alegría. The sentence was, cities in Western Europe put out flags and banners, banderas y pancartas, rejoicing in the defeat of the Nazi war machine during World War II. The next one is throughout, spelled Through, through, and out, O-U-T, throughout, all together, todo junto. This means in every part of. The sentence was, the 8th of May was the day when German troops throughout Europe finally surrendered. So en toda Europa, throughout Europe. This next one is more of a pronunciation check. The word is courage, coraje. The sentence was, your courage has defeated the Nazis. The war is over. It's spelled C-O-U-R-A-G-E, and the common mistake is saying courage instead of courage. You have to fight the temptation to close your mouth and pronounce the O and the U separately. We don't say courage, we say courage, courage. The J sound is also difficult for some Spanish speakers. It's the same sound you can find in the word project or January. A lot of my students say project and January, and they're not making that J sound, right? The J sound. They're not used to it. The sound we're looking for is the J sound, like when we say Girona, for example. Girona, project, courage. If you have a hard time making that sound, try using the CH sound, like in chair, okay? Courage. It's closer to the real sound. All right, next one. To wander, spelled W-A-N-D-E-R. To wander means to walk around without a particular purpose, deambular, or vagar in Spanish. The sentence was, Princess Elizabeth and her sister Margaret were allowed to wander incognito among the crowds to take part in the celebrations. So they were given permission to wander among the crowds, right? Among the people celebrating on the street. Be careful not to confuse this verb, to wander, with to wonder. As in, I wonder where they are. Me pregunto dónde están. Two different verbs with very similar pronunciation. Wander and wonder. Wander and wonder. I know you're thinking there's barely a difference, they sound the same, etc., but I promise there's a difference. You just have to tune your ear and get used to the nuances, las sutilezas. Finally, I wanted to talk about a phrasal verb that I saw in the same sentence. To take part in something. This means to participate. Again, the sentence was, Princess Elizabeth and her sister Princess Margaret were allowed to wander incognito among the crowds and take part in the celebrations. Formar parte or participar. All right, that's the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I give you a lot of information with the vocabulary and stuff. So if you want to remember it all or have it written down, tenerlo apuntado, write to me at English with Dane on Instagram or send me an email at englishwithdane@gmail.com, and I'll send you the full transcript for this and all future episodes. I recommend it because it's a great learning tool. All right, that's it for me. Follow English with Dane on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to the show, and leave a 5-star review. Support the show by sharing it with friends, family, or anyone who you think would enjoy it. All right, talk soon. Bye-bye.
This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the news. The end of the war in Europe was officially announced by Mr. Churchill at 3 o'clock this afternoon in a broadcast from 10 Downing Street. He said, "Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, the representative of the German High Command and government signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea and air forces in Europe to the Allied Expeditionary Force and to the Soviet High Command. Today, this agreement will be ratified and confirmed in Berlin, where Air Chief Marshal Tedder and General de Tassigny will sign on behalf of General Eisenhower and Marshal